The blizzard erases Aspen, Colorado. High in a glass mansion, an 8-year-old boy watches in terror as his paralyzed father is dragged into the storm. The one person who should have protected him smiles as she closes the door. The boy follows, his cries swallowed by the snow, but his whisper of despair is heard by the only one who can find him, a police canine named Zeus. In the hospital, behind a mask of perfect grief, a plan to steal a fortune is set. But the villains don't know about the two witnesses. The boy who saw everything and the paralyzed father who can only communicate by blinking his eyes. The blizzard descended, swallowing the mountain whole. It was a suffocating, soundless white that pressed against the sprawling fortress of glass and cedar. Inside, 8-year-old Caleb Vance was hidden in the alcove of his bedroom, his knees drawn to his chest. He was small for his age, with his father's dark, serious eyes. Eyes that saw too much. He heard their voices from the grand hallway below, his stepmother's low melodic purr, and the clipped nervous tones of Marcus Slade. Seraphina Vance was 30, a woman of sculpted porcelain beauty with ash blonde hair and eyes the color of a winter lake, reflective and frigid. Marcus, 40, was his father's chief financial officer, a man who wore his bespoke suits like armor. "It has to be tonight," Marcus whispered. "The storm is perfect cover." Caleb pressed his ear to the floorboards. "The boy?" Marcus asked. Seraphina laughed, a sound with no warmth. "He's afraid of his own shadow. He won't be a problem." Caleb crept to his door, cracking it open just enough to see Marcus pass Seraphina a small dark vial. She palmed it and glided silently toward his father's study. Elijah Vance, 45, was lost in a world of equations. His study was his sanctuary. He was a brilliant inventor, a man who had walled himself off with work since his first wife's death, leaving him vulnerable. He didn't hear Seraphina enter. "Still at it, my love," she murmured, holding a heavy crystal tumbler of whiskey. "I thought you might need something to keep the chill away." Elijah gave her a tired, grateful smile. "Thank you, Sarah. That's thoughtful." He drank it down in 2 long swallows. The warmth came first, then became a heavy chemical tide, a creeping numbness. His fingers went thick and clumsy. He tried to stand, but the command from his mind to his legs was severed. He tried to speak her name, but his tongue was a lead weight. The paralysis solidified. The crystal tumbler slipped from his nerveless grasp, shattering on the hardwood floor. Elijah crashed sideways from his chair, his body inert, his mind screaming. He was trapped, a ghost in his own flesh, his eyes wide and frantic. Seraphina stepped back to avoid the spill. She crouched, peering into his terror-filled eyes. "Oh, good," she whispered, her voice flat and clinical. "He's in there." The study door opened again, and Marcus entered, pulling a heavy rolled-up plastic tarp. "Is it done?" he hissed. "He's paralyzed." "Help me get him on this," Seraphina commanded. From the upstairs landing, Caleb watched, his small hand pressed so hard against his mouth he could taste blood. He watched in frozen horror as they rolled his father's limp body onto the tarp. He saw his father's hand trailing limp against the floorboards. That hand, the hand that fixed his toys and tucked him in at night, broke the spell. As they dragged their heavy burden toward the rear terrace, Caleb bolted. He scrambled into his room, yanked on his snow boots, and pulled his parka over his pajamas. Elijah felt the agonizing scrape of the tarp across the floor. Then the sudden, shocking blast of the blizzard as the terrace door slid open. The cold was a physical blow. He was dragged into the churning, waist-deep drifts. Caleb slipped out the side door, a tiny shadow in the blinding white. He followed, his small legs pumping, his lungs burning. He saw them reach the ravine at the edge of the property. With a coordinated heave, they rolled Elijah off the tarp. He tumbled, crashing through the brittle crust before settling halfway down the embankment. Seraphina stood at the edge, breathing heavily. She slid down the bank slightly, brushed a single snowflake from his unblinking eyelid, and whispered, "Good night, my love." Then she and Marcus turned, fighting their way back to the warm, bright house. Caleb hid behind a massive pine tree until their figures were swallowed by the snow. He stumbled, half running, half falling, down the snowy slope. He fell onto his father's chest, grabbing the lapels of his coat. "Dad! Dad, get up! It's cold! Wake up!" He shook his father, but the man was unresponsive, his eyes wide open, staring at the storm. "No, no, please, wake up!" Caleb screamed, pounding on his father's chest. "Dad, don't leave me!" He collapsed onto his father, his small body shaking with sobs. His cries were frantic, desperate sounds swallowed instantly by the roaring white void. Miles away but closing, a Pitkin County Sheriff's SUV moved slowly through the chaos. Behind the wheel sat Officer Kalen Riley, 32, a transplant from the Denver PD. In the passenger seat sat Zeus, a 4-year-old German Shepherd, 90 pounds of disciplined muscle and intelligence that Kyle trusted more than any human partner. "Last check on the 82 cutoff, Z," Kyle muttered. "Then we'll see about that steak I saved you." Zeus suddenly changed. His body went rigid, his ears pivoted forward, and a low woof vibrated deep in his chest. He stood, his paws on the dashboard, his nose pressed against the vent. "What is it, bud?" Kyle said, slowing the vehicle. But Zeus didn't stand down. He escalated. A high-pitched, frantic whine escaped his throat, and he began to paw at the window. Then came his find alert bark, the sound for human distress. Kyle's weariness vanished, replaced by a cold surge of adrenaline. "Show me." He killed the engine. "Dispatch, this is Kilo 4. I'm at the Vance estate. My K9 is alerting. I'm investigating on foot." He grabbed his flashlight and jumped out. Zeus was already out, pulling Kyle toward a gap in the fence line. They plunged into the unplowed drift. Zeus led him toward the ravine. Kyle crested a small rise, and his flashlight beam found them. A man, Elijah, was half buried in a snowdrift, his expensive clothes stiff, his face pale and waxy. Draped over him, barely moving, was the small, shivering form of Caleb. Zeus was instantly at the boy's side, barking, licking the child's ice-caked face. "Kid! Hey, kid! I'm the police. Can you hear me?" Caleb's eyes fluttered. "My dad," he gasped. "They left him." Kyle's blood ran cold. He pressed 2 gloved fingers to the man's neck, searching for a pulse. He waited. Thump. It was faint, thready, impossibly slow, but it was there. "Okay, kid. We're getting you out." Kyle ripped off his parka and wrapped it around Caleb, scooping the boy into his arms. "Dispatch, Kilo 4. I have them. 2 victims, both alive, severe hypothermia. I need EMS. Stat." He looked back at the house, then at the tracks. 2 distinct sets of adult boot prints leading away from the ravine. This was no accident. This was an execution. The ER bay at Aspen Valley Hospital was a shock of bright sterile warmth. Dr. Aries Thorne, the chief of emergency medicine, was a man in his early 50s whose tall, lean frame and silver-gray hair gave him an air of academic authority. "Trauma 1, he commanded. "Start the warm fluid circuit. Toxicology and neurology. Now." Kyle stood in a puddle of melting snow when the main ER doors slid open, admitting Serafina Vance and Marcus Slade. Serafina was the picture of frantic wifely panic, her ash-blonde hair artfully disheveled. "My husband, my son," she cried. "The police called. They said there was an accident." Dr. Thorne emerged from the trauma bay. "Mrs. Vance, I'm Dr. Thorne. We're doing everything we can, but he is in critical condition." Serafina pressed a hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Kyle watched her face. He saw the panic. He heard the despair, but he saw no tears. Her eyes were wide, blue, and perfectly dry. His core temperature is dangerously low, Dr. Thorne continued. But we're also seeing signs of a significant neurological event. We believe he may have ingested something before the exposure. Serafina let out a wrenching theatrical wail and collapsed against Marcus. He always said he didn't want this, she choked out. He couldn't. Not after his first wife. Marcus spoke, his voice smooth. Doctor, what my wife is trying to say is that Elijah has a DNR, a do not resuscitate order. The words landed like a lead weight. Kyle felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Do you have the paperwork, Mrs. Vance? The advance directive? Dr. Thorne asked. It's at home with our lawyer, Serafina said, burying her face in Marcus's chest. Doctor, I am Marcus Slade, Mr. Vance's CFO and personal counsel. I can personally attest that I witnessed him sign the documents. He was adamant. Kyle noted the possessiveness of Marcus' hand on Serafina's back, the inappropriate intimacy. A verbal confirmation is not a legal document, Dr. Thorne stated flatly. Until I have a signed notarized order in my hand, my duty is to save his life. Serafina looked up. But Caleb, my son, is he okay? Did he see? Kyle stepped forward. He's alive, ma'am. He's being treated for hypothermia, but he's conscious. Serafina's head snapped toward Kyle, her eyes widening. Is he talking? Kyle's expression remained flat. He's in shock, but he's a material witness. The color drained from Serafina's face. Later, Kyle found himself blocked from seeing Caleb by hospital staff and Marcus Slade's legal maneuvering. But he had an idea. He returned with Zeus, now wearing a therapy dog vest. This is Zeus. He's a certified therapy dog. He's the one who found Caleb in the storm. The boy was holding on to him before the paramedics arrived, Kyle explained. Serafina looked trapped. She couldn't deny her traumatized son the comfort of the dog who saved him without looking like a monster. Kyle entered the room. Caleb was pale but awake, his dark eyes wide with terror. When he saw Serafina and Marcus, he visibly flinched. While Kyle deliberately drew the adult's attention with procedural questions, Zeus moved to the bedside. Caleb reached out one small, trembling hand. Zeus nudged it with his wet nose. Caleb wrapped his arms around the dog's thick, warm neck, burying his face in his fur. The whisper was tiny, meant only for the dog's ear, but just loud enough for Kyle's trained hearing. They threw him, Zeus, Caleb whispered. They threw Daddy. She and the man, they're bad. Kyle's blood had turned to ice. He had it. Kyle walked out of the pediatric wing and strode toward the ER. He found Dr. Thorne in his glass-walled office. Doc, I just heard one, Kyle said, entering and closing the door. He recounted the incident, his voice low and rapid. He saw them. He's terrified of her and Slade. He whispered it into my dog's fur. They threw him, Zeus, they're bad. He was begging the dog not to let them hurt him. The two streams of suspicion crashed together. And the DNR request, Thorne said, his voice a flat, cold monotone. A 45-year-old man in perfect health, and they're pushing a do not resuscitate order before he's even stabilized. Kyle nodded. They're not just waiting for him to die, document. They're here to finish the job. This hospital isn't a sanctuary. It's the weapon. Thorne picked up his desk phone. A man can't be murdered if he isn't here. He pressed a button. Elena, my office now. Elena Rostova, the head nurse of the ICU, arrived. She was a woman in her mid-50s with stern, piercing blue eyes. Elena, I have reason to believe the patient in ICU 3, Mr. Vance, is the target of an active homicide attempt by his wife and her partner. They are in the hospital. I am moving him off the books. Elena didn't blink. Where? The old isolation wing, 3rd floor west. It's stocked for emergencies, but it's offline. He'll vanish from the census. Thorne turned to Kyle. But we have a problem. They are with the boy. If they see us move him, they'll know. I'll handle them, Kyle said. I'll call Child Protective Services. A potential endangerment case. That will tie them up with a social worker for at least 2 hours. The gambit was set. Kyle walked back and informed Serafina and Marcus about the mandatory CPS evaluation. They were trapped. Simultaneously, Dr. Thorne created a false medical emergency, announcing Elijah needed an emergency flight transfer to Denver. Elena and Thorne moved Elijah to the old isolation wing instead. Dr. Thorne pulled the plastic ID band from Elijah's wrist and replaced it with a blank one marked John Doe, Alpha Unknown. Elijah Vance is on a helicopter to Denver, Thorne said quietly. As of this moment, he no longer exists. For 3 days, the room had been Elijah Vance's sanctuary and his prison, guarded in 12-hour shifts by Kyle Riley and Elena Rostova. Caleb had been placed in emergency foster care, insulating him from his stepmother. Serafina and Marcus, satisfied that Elijah was dying states away, had returned to the mansion to perform their public grief. Elijah Vance woke up not with a gasp, but with a click. Awareness flooded him in one horrifying ice-cold wave. He was not in the snow. He was in a room. He could smell the dust. He could hear the low rhythmic beep of a monitor. And that was all. He couldn't feel his hands. He couldn't feel his legs. He tried to take a deep breath, but the air was pushed into his lungs by a machine. He tried to speak, but his jaw was lead. He tried to scream, but the air wouldn't move. He was buried alive in his own flesh. His heart monitor began to accelerate. Its steady beep turning into a frantic pace. Elena Rostova was on her feet instantly. John Doe, you're safe. Your heart rate is climbing. I need you to listen to my voice. Elena moved closer and froze. His eyes were wide open, and they weren't just staring. They were following her. Ares, she said into her pager. Get up here now. He's awake. Dr. Thorne arrived with Kyle right behind him. His vitals are erratic because he's terrified, Elena said, pointing. Look. Thorne leaned down. Mr. Vance, my name is Dr. Thorne. You are in the hospital. You are safe. Can you hear me? If you can hear me and understand me, blink your eyes one time. The room held its breath. After an agonizing second, blink. Oh my God, Elena whispered. He has locked-in syndrome, Thorne diagnosed. The paralytic Serafina used combined with the severe hypothermia caused a focal infarct. His higher cognitive functions are perfectly intact, but his entire motor pathway is severed. Except for vertical eye movement. He's been awake this whole time. Kyle stepped forward. Doc, we need a system now. Mr. Vance, blink once for yes and blink twice for no. Do you understand? Blink. Kyle moved into Elijah's line of sight. Mr. Vance, I am Officer Kalen Riley. I was the one who found you. I found your son, Caleb. Elijah's eyes instantly welled with tears. Caleb is safe, Kyle said. He is in protective custody. Serafina cannot get to him. Do you understand? Blink. Did you go out into that storm willingly? Blink. Blink. No. Did Serafina give you something in your drink? Blink. Was Marcus Slade there with her? Blink. Did they drag you outside and leave you to die? The tears streamed from Elijah's eyes. Blink. Kyle had his witness. Later that night, Kyle used his master key card to access the service corridors. Beside him, Zeus trotted silently. And holding Kyle's other hand was Caleb. Kyle had signed him out for a follow-up evaluation. Where are we going, Kyle? Caleb whispered. It's spooky. There's someone in here who needs to see you more than anything in the world. Kyle pushed open the door. Caleb saw the figure in the bed, his face pale, his eyes wide open. Is he a ghost? Caleb whispered. No, son, Kyle said. He's right here. He's just stuck. But he can hear everything you say. Watch. Kyle looked at Elijah. Elijah, I brought a visitor. Is this your son, Caleb? Blink. Caleb's eyes widened. Dad, he whispered, stepping closer. He touched his father's arm. It was warm. It was real. Dad, it's me. At the sound of his name, Zeus nudged Caleb's hand and rested his head on the edge of his father's bed. Elijah's eyes were frantic, crying. Caleb climbed onto the edge of the bed and laid his head on his father's chest, just as he had in the snow. It's okay, Dad, he whispered. I'm safe. Kyle and Zeus are protecting me, and we're going to protect you. You just have to fight. The blizzard had broken. In the glass and cedar fortress, Serafina Vance and Marcus Slade were celebrating their victory. They were in Elijah's study, now theirs to occupy. They were on a conference call with the corporate legal team. Yes, Lawrence, we understand it's a tragedy, Marcus said. But Elijah was very clear about his wishes. The disembodied voice was dry and unmoved. Be that as it may, Marcus, my hands are tied. We cannot begin the liquidation until we have a formal declaration of incapacitation or a pronouncement of death. And frankly, the paperwork from this Denver facility is non-existent. We need an attending physician's signature or a death certificate. Serafina slammed her wine glass down. He's stalling. Marcus turned from the window, his mask of control cracking. No. He's asking for something we don't have. We've been played. It was too easy. The emergency transfer, the brain herniation. That was Thorne. Why send him to a facility we've never heard of? His eyes narrowed. I don't like loose threads. And Dr. Aries Thorne is a thread I need to pull. That afternoon, Marcus drove to a dive bar called the Miner's Sump. In a back booth sat Frank Rooker, a disgraced ex-cop who now worked as a private investigator. Mr. Slade, Rooker rasped. You look uncomfortable. I need you to watch someone. Dr. Aries Thorne. I need to know where he goes, who he talks to, every minute. Marcus threw a thick envelope of cash onto the table. 2 days later, Rooker's report was succinct. The doc is clean. Works 16-hour days. Except he's got a secret. Twice a day he vanishes. He takes the service elevator to the 3rd floor, West Wing, the old isolation wing. He spends about an hour up there, then comes back down. No patients, no charts, just him and the ICU dragon lady, Rostova. Marcus' blood ran cold. A secret offline wing. I need eyes in that wing, Frank. Already on it. The only other person who has access is a janitor. Name's Mitch, works the night shift, and he's got gambling debts up to his eyeballs. He's ripe. That night, Marcus cornered Mitch in the hospital's concrete subbasement. Mitch was a gaunt man with the hollowed-out eyes and shaking hands of perpetual terror. Marcus opened a briefcase. Inside were stacks of cash. You push your cart through the 3rd floor isolation wing. You find out who is in the room at the end of the hall. You get me a name, a description, or a photo. You do that, and this is all yours. Mitch nodded, his hand snatching the first stack of bills. An hour later, Mitch pushed his cleaning cart into the corridor. He saw the cop, Riley, sitting outside the last door with the German Shepherd. Mitch cleaned until the cop left to use the restroom. Heart hammering, Mitch used his master key. He pushed the door open. There was just a man in the bed, pale, dark-haired, tubes running from his body, his eyes wide open. Mitch stared at the patient's wristband. John Doe Alpha. He fled and met Marcus in the basement. It's just some guy. He's pale, dark hair. He's just staring. The bracelet says John Doe Alpha. Marcus grabbed the janitor. Dark hair, mid-40s, a scar on his left temple from a skiing accident? Mitch nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, that's him. Marcus released him. Elijah. They hadn't transferred him. They'd hidden him. The cop, the doctor, the nurse. They were all in on it. The boy had talked. They knew. Get out. Marcus hissed. He stormed back to the mansion. He found Serafina in the media room. He's alive. Marcus spat. Elijah, he's here in the hospital. Thorne and that cop, they hid him. The transfer was a lie. Serafina's face went white. He's alive. He can talk. No, Marcus said. The janitor said he was staring, locked in. That's why they're hiding him. They're waiting for him to recover. They're waiting for him to be a witness. They'll arrest us. We're finished. Shut up, he snapped. We finish it properly. He pulled up a schematic of the hospital floor plans. The cop isn't there 24/7. The crash carts are stocked with potassium chloride. It's untraceable. In a man in his condition, it will look like a simple tragic heart attack. The third floor had become a hunting ground. Kyle and Thorne knew the breach was critical. They knew Mitch had been compromised. He'll come tonight, Kyle stated. He can't risk letting Elijah recover. Dr. Thorne called Elena. Prep an 4-line with a saline lock and get me a decoy crash cart. Stock it, but remove the KCl vials. Lock the real ones in my office now. He turned to Kyle. We will be ready. He wants to play doctor. We'll let him. Marcus Slade moved through the sub-basement corridors like a surgeon. He wore scrubs, a white lab coat, and a stolen badge. He took the service elevator and emerged on the third floor. The hallway was empty. He found the decoy crash cart. He opened the narcotics drawer and palmed 2 vials of potassium chloride along with a syringe. He approached the room at the end of the hall. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. The room was dark, lit only by the green glow of the cardiac monitor. Elijah Vance lay in the bed. His eyes shifted, locking onto Marcus. Hello, Elijah, Marcus whispered. He began filling the syringe. It's a shame. Truly. You just wouldn't die. He tapped the syringe, expelling a tiny drop. Serafina sends her regards. This will just stop your heart. He poised the needle over the 4-line. That's far enough. The voice came from the shadows. The main lights clicked on. Kalen Riley stood in the doorway, his pistol aimed at Marcus's chest. Police, drop the needle. Marcus froze. He heard a low, deep growl. From the bathroom, Zeus emerged, his body low, his lips curled back, his teeth bared. Marcus was trapped. He lunged at Elijah. The needle aimed like a dagger. If I go, he goes. Zeus. Fast. Kyle yelled. The German Shepherd exploded across the room. His jaws clamped down on Marcus' arm. A crunch of bone and tissue. Marcus screamed. The syringe flew from his fingers, shattering against the wall. Zeus did not release. Kyle was on him in an instant, his knee in Marcus' back. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Elijah Vance, he roared, snapping the cuffs on. Doctor. Thorne and Nurse Rostova burst into the room. He's secure, Kyle said. Marcus spat. You have nothing. A locked-in vegetable. He can't testify. It's my word against yours. A new sound filled the room. A low, rasping, inhuman sound, a groan of pure effort. All eyes turned to the bed. Elijah Vance was shaking. His face was beet red. He was fighting the paralysis, fighting the silence. His lips cracked and dry, peeled back from his teeth. "For," he gasped. Marcus froze. "For my son." The words were slurred, barely recognizable, but they were words. Elijah had spoken. The locked-in man was free. Kyle reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Kilo 4. Takedown complete. Suspect in custody. Send a car." He switched channels. "Tactical team, execute the warrant now." Miles away, Serafina Vance was pouring herself a final glass of champagne, her luggage packed for the Caymans. The doorbell rang. She opened the door. The porch was filled with tactical officers. "Serafina Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Her champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stone floor. Back in the hospital room, Marcus Slade was dragged away. Kyle, Thorne, and Elena stood by Elijah's bed. Zeus whined softly, nudging Elijah's hand. "It's over, Elijah," Kyle said. "It's finally over." Elijah's eyes closed. And for the first time in a week, his monitor settled into the slow, steady rhythm of a man at peace. This story reminds us that even in the darkest nights, God is always working. A miracle is not always loud. Sometimes a miracle is the loyalty of a dog like Zeus. Sometimes it is the courage of an 8-year-old boy like Caleb who dares to whisper the truth. And sometimes it is God placing the right people like Officer Kyle and Dr. Thorne in the right place at the right time. In our own lives, many of us can feel locked in, paralyzed by fear or injustice. Elijah was locked inside his own body, but he was never abandoned. Even when you feel most alone, even when your voice has been silenced, faith is still listening. There is always a light, even if it's just the flicker of a single blink that can cut through the darkness. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Comment amen below if you believe that God never abandons the innocent. May God bless you, bless your family, and always light your path, even in the darkest of times.